Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your client's peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Beth and Stan.
Well, welcome back to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Beth Hand. My guest today is an author, entrepreneur, and wealth advisor, Sam Vadakekut. Sam, thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited to have you on the show today.
My pleasure to be here and be part of your show. Thank you.
Absolutely. So your story and your approach to the way you look at really everything you do is very unique. So before we dive in and I ask you a bunch of other questions, I was hoping you might take a couple of minutes and tell our listeners a little bit about kind of your background and what shapes the work that you do.
I grew up in India, but I've been in US about 35 years almost. I grew up in an entrepreneur family and I love building business from scratch. And I've been an entrepreneur for about close to 30 years, made me look old, but I started that from my college days and I love building business from scratch. And I had a natural way of handling money, but I was always intrigued about money and what's behind that, so I really looked beyond the education that you get from school, and that's what kind of took me down the path of studying about money and the force behind money. So I studied both the natural and the supernatural side of money, and that's what kind of my background. And for the last about 10-15 years I've been really digging into it to learn more about it. And once I learned more, I realized, okay, I got to educate people, and that's how I end up doing most of the stuff that I'm doing now.
That is really cool. You have such a unique perspective bringing that in. And I know from that, it has inspired a lot of different things, but you've actually written a book about my father's business. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write the book and what readers could expect from the book.
So, my focus is more faith-based finance. So, I use a lot of biblical principle and ancient wisdom on money and wealth and stewardship. And so, Bible talks over 2,000 scriptures about those things. So those are ancient wisdom that has foundations or principles, I call it. So there's biblical principles on money and wealth and all those things. So that's what, the more I study it, I realize that there's a lot of depth and everybody uses it. So it seems like sunshine and rain, it is given to everyone of us. How do we use it based on how we recognize the depth of it is what intrigued me to really pursue this path and to create an educational wealth strategy system where it is faith-based and it is very much of things. It's very practical, simple, and profound.
That is really cool. I love that it's faith-based, and that is kind of the thing that you use to shape all of the work that you do and your perspective on the work that you do, because the Bible is full of all of these really great lessons and principles that are out there, but you've really gone through and kind of dug those out and turned it into a system, which is really cool. So for our listeners that may not be aware of that, tell us a little bit about the kingdom principles and give us some examples of what it looks like, to what some of those are, and what integrating those into your business really looks like.
So just to touch on your last question also about my father's business, I got that from Luke 2:49. Bible says, we all are about our Father's business. And as Jesus was sent from heaven as an apostle to earth to expand the kingdom of God or the Father, so we are sent equipped in whatever capacity we grew up in, sent to the marketplace to bring that to others. So like I always say, a tree never eats its own fruit. So always our gifting, our talent is for others. So that's where I learned that biblical principles. Like I said, there's over 2,000 scriptures that talks about money and wealth. But the problem is, if you don't understand the force behind it, you always end up misusing something you don't know what that proper use is for. So that's when I studied the spiritual principles behind, I realized that you can either be a slave to money or be an entrusted steward. So it's either a enslaved person who has a lot of money but has scarcity mindset, or an entrusted steward who manages and grows the wealth, not just for themselves and their family, but for the society also.
No, that makes sense. And I love that the stewardship, that was one of the things that really intrigued me when I started looking into your book. I love the stewardship mindset and the way that you really kind of practically show how to use that in business as an entrepreneur. It's interesting because it's kind of the flip side for a lot of the modern wisdom on money. We are such a materialistic society. We are a greedy society. And so it's very interesting to have this perspective where we can stop and look at how these biblical principles can really be applied to modern day businesses. What's some of the tips and wisdom that you've learned that you use in your book and that you've used in your businesses?
So one of the key things that, like you said, we live in a materialistic world. It's not just US, around the world, it is, sort of infected the whole world. And because it's nothing wrong with money. Money is neutral, but it's the force behind or what's driving you, for achieving that is what a lot of times enslaves you. So the principle that is used is, we are not owners, but we are stewards. Because today or tomorrow, our time is up. No matter how big a barn or big a business you build, you can't take it with you. But if you steward it well and create a legacy you can transfer to the next generation of the people and educate them, then the value of what you create will last forever and more than just your temporary needs being fixed. So one of the principles that specifically focus is how do you steward your wealth more than just own and accumulate, and because that a lot of times create greed and unsatisfaction and even scarcity mindset. You can have $1 million in the bank, still feel not enough. So when you're able to steward it and know that, hey, I can't take this with me, and able to understand what truly money and the force behind, you can master it, and money will work for you 24/7 instead of you working for it and laboring for thorns and thistles. What Bible says in if you work too hard for just money, you're creating a lot of thorns and thistles. But God made us to work and put our talents and abilities and passion to fulfill the purpose that he has for. So if you can find your purpose in what you're doing, you will always follow that the passion that he has given you for greater purpose.
Purpose was actually a word that came to mind even before you said it as you were speaking. So I love that you brought that up. It really is, money is something that when that's what you believe you're striving for, it leads to a lot of unhappiness versus, when you realize that you're just a steward, using this to push forward a greater purpose, it really changes the perspective on how we look at our money, how we spend our money, and the reason we get out there and try to earn money, So I love just kind of your entire viewpoint on that. And beyond the book, which we'll talk more about in a minute, but beyond the book, you're also a mentor and a coach. You have a coaching program, which is really cool. So a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners listen to this podcast. So if they're interested in, maybe they know they need a mindset shift, what does your mentoring and coaching program look like?
You touched a great point, mindset, because that's where a lot of our, good or bad comes from, right? It's the mindset. So that's where my coaching program is, I have a short course and also a long 12-month course, which takes you through these biblical principles on it's a faith-based money. How do but build wealth and also manage wealth so that you can steward it to last longer than your lifetime here. So my program takes in depth of what is your calling, what is your purpose, what's your passion, what's your gifting, and we combine all those things to say, hey, if you can find your purpose, you will be more satisfied, and you won't just trade your money for just temporary happiness, but you can use your money to really have a fulfilled life and still enjoy the material things. There's nothing wrong with material things. It's if you let the material things control you or master you, you get enslaved by it, and then it's always about the next thing, and it never satisfies you. So the coaching program takes you through it's a holistic program, takes you through your body, mind, soul, spirit, that combines it, because we all are spirit beings living in this dirt body. And so this body ends after a few years, but your soul and spirit, Bible says, at least forever. So that eternal riches can be built here, sort of your eternal retirement. You can do planning here using your temporary wealth to build eternal riches and reward for eternity.
That is a fantastic answer. I think you said it all right there. So I hope everybody was listening. That's phenomenal. So talk to us. Let's see. We've talked about kind of mentor and coaching. You've worked with a lot of different people, probably in a lot of different industries, I would assume. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see modern entrepreneurs making when it comes to the way they manage wealth or the way they view their wealth?
So again, the mindset, right? So this is where we are in this material society. We are all driven by money. Money is a needed thing. So, because without that, the society don't function because of the way financial structures. But if you are pursuing that without a purpose, if you're only profit driven, you end up climbing the ladder and achieving more and more without a satisfaction. So a lot of the entrepreneurs, they're building things, but they are missing out the managing part or stewarding part. So a lot of times, if you are not measuring well, it's hard to manage. And if you are not managing well, it's hard to steward. So when you are missing these links and just pursuing money, money will enslave you and you are constantly making money. It only creates thorns and thistles or a lot of stress and anxiety and worry and fear instead of living by faith. Faith doesn't mean that you don't do anything. It's putting in action, trusting that God enlarges your territory and you're more fruitful than just thorns and thistles. You can make a lot of money, still feel like empty, but you can have little, still be satisfied, and also have a heart to give. Because giving is one way of, I teach in my mentor program, how to increase your influence and impact financially and also for legacy wise eternally.
That's an excellent answer, and I love that. On your website and in some of the other interviews you've done, you've talked about referring to some of these entrepreneurs, CEOs, different leaders as marketplace apostles. Tell me what it means to be a marketplace apostle.
So, like I mentioned, there's two scriptures that when I wrote the book, it was one Luke 2:49, because we all are about our Father's business, and in Matthew 6:24, you cannot serve both God and mammon. So mammon, in essence, God and devil says mammon. Mammon is a force behind this pursuit of money. So this is where if you don't overcome, you end up serving that demonic force or the evil in a nature of money. Money can be used for good and bad. So the thing about chewing is that if you are not careful with it, it would start controlling you. So to answer your question is, what are you setting your mind on? And the CEOs and entrepreneurs, we all are driven by that marketplace, profitability. But like I mentioned, as Jesus was sent from heaven as an apostle, so we are, those who are equipped in the fourfold ministry or fivefold ministry within the four walls of church, are equipped to be sent out as apostle to the marketplace. Because like I said, if you're fruitful, the tree don't eat its own. You take your gifting and talent and the pruning that you and the equipping in the four walls of church, you take it to the marketplace to expand the kingdom through your gifting and talent. So your business can be profitable, but you should be more purpose driven than profit driven. So when you're purpose driven, profit will come to you when you're creating value. So when you're more value driven and purpose driven, profit is an automatic result of it. It is attracted to the value. But when you are purpose driven, you're expanding the purpose God has placed in you, and you're becoming an apostle in the marketplace. Is one who is sent out, is what apostle means.
I love it. I love everything about that. Tell me a little bit about, let's say there's someone listening and they agree, they want this mindset. They don't want to be a slave to money anymore. Maybe they're an entrepreneur. They want to have this mindset of being a good steward, but they don't know where to start. What advice would you give someone? Where would you get them started?
So a lot of my mentors that comes to me, because I've been mentoring for 25 plus years. I started as a youth minister, mentoring a lot of the young people, and over the years that I learned and saw that everybody has a lot of things similar to a coach. There's also a mentor. It's a little bit different in how you guide. It's more, my principle that I use is more of a hand up instead of a hand out. End up keeping people where they are and comfortable. You had to get out of your comfort zone in your mindset. That's usually through a hand up. And so I equip and challenge people to get your gifting and talent refined for greater value. Refinement is not always fun. It's like gold going through fire, right? But unless it goes through it, the value never goes up. So once you are refined through mentoring, you are able to create greater value and able to pour into others. So Bible talks about Paul, Timothy, Titus. It's a mentorship program or discipleship, that what you learn, when you pour into others, greater knowledge and wealth comes in you and through you. So that's how the kingdom also expands, in you first and through you in the marketplace.
Excellent. Good, great wisdom there. I hope everyone was listening for that. Okay, I have one final question for you before we run out of time. And this will be interesting for you to answer. So, through all of the work that you do and the education that you're doing, what is it you hope your legacy will be?
I'm a I do a lot of big emphasis on the legacy part, right? A lot of, because, even with the wealth advisory, legacy is one thing that I focus on through my mentorship and the coaching program. Legacy is for me more than just, transferring some wealth to my kids or in building a big business. For me, Bible talks about using your natural wealth, which Deuteronomy 8:18 says, it is he who gives you the ability to create wealth, using that to create eternal wealth or eternal riches. So when you take your natural wealth based on your gifting and talent, what you create here, and putting that to the use in the marketplace and in a society where God has placed you, and expand in the kingdom of God, which creates eternal riches. I talked about eternal retirement, right? So with what you prepare here through using those things will help you to create eternal legacy, which is even after your natural body is gone, you can continue to impact for generations. So for me, that's one of the main thing about the holistic approach to wealth, is taking the wealth and creating the eternal legacy. That is, it is not just your family alone, but the society and wherever you have planted, that it will keep producing for generations to come.
I love that. And that really fits into kind of our entire viewpoint with the Legacy Leaders podcast. Our whole goal is to really help people, help all of our clients, the clients of our listeners, really be able to build a lasting legacy and pour positive things into younger generations so that we can have a positive impact on the world. And so we talk a lot about, it's not about in the estate planning world, the financial advisor world, it all comes down to money. But you've mentioned several times in here something I completely agree with that matches with our vision, which is it's also about giving your time and your talent and the skills that you were gifted with to, serve the Lord and to do the best possible job that you can, pouring into those younger generations, mentoring them, and just doing the best you possibly can to be a good steward. So an excellent answer to the legacy question. Tricks people up sometimes, but I figured you would have a good answer to that. Do
Legacy,
you
I mean,
have
that's a very important thing, because that's the legacy is what Jesus brought for us from heaven, because that's a legacy he left here when he came 2000 years ago. He left a legacy for us to follow. And because that was not a religion, that was not in a money or anything, but it was a kingdom, king and domain. That's the two things. You and I, we are kings and rulers and lords, but we serve a king of kings and a lord of lords. And how we expand that is what truly the eternal legacy that is in all of us. And we're talking about next generation. It's something that we had to be very cautious in how you transfer that wealth, because if it is not transferred through education, it always ends in one generation or two max. So if you educate them and equip them, it will last for multiple generations.
Yes, I agree with that. And one thing we always try to point out to our clients at the law firm is that it's so important. Everyone thinks about passing down money or things to younger generations, but there's a dark side to that wealth, because if you pass down that money and you pass down those things, but you don't pass down your faith and you don't pass down your family history and you don't pass down the work ethic and the grit that it took to build that wealth, then really it can be very detrimental to younger generations. And so our argument is it is just as important to pass down some of those non-financial wealth things like our history and our stories and our faith. We need to share those just as much as we want to pass down money and other things as well.
You said it excellently. You just answered Matthew 6:33, or was it 6:24, about you cannot serve God and mammon. What you were just showing was that if you don't do what you just mentioned, the generation will end up serving mammon instead of serving God. And you just
Right.
answered exactly, what you guys do. And that's excellent to see that a law firm, equips people to know more than just handing out money, but in a generational wealth that become a very strong eternal legacy.
Perfect. Absolutely. Well, for all of our listeners, this has been the Legacy Leaders podcast with your host, Katie Beth Hand. And my guest today was Sam Vadakekut. To connect with Sam, you can you can find his book on aboutmyfathersbusiness.life. There's also great information on his mentoring and coaching there as well. You can also find out more about his wealth services at optimalwealthstrategygroup.com, and be sure that you grab a copy of About My Father's Business that you can find on Amazon. Sam, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.